Hi, welcome everyone to part 12 of the videos in our Make a Browser Game playlist. And if you've been following along, you'll know that we're making a remake of a favourite game of mine called Deuteros. It was a game of my childhood. I used to play in the Amiga, and you may know the screenshots. If you're from that generation, from the early 90s, some of you maybe. You'll be familiar with why it seemed to get like a bit of a cult following. It's a very different game. It was a sequel to Millennium 2.2, but this you may, if you've been to that kind of stuff, the older games, you may remember some of these screenshots. So there's a few remakes out there already by various people, but what I'm aiming to do is make a multiplayer version of it rather than just a remake of it as it was. So I'm going to try and capture as much as I can of the original game, but then obviously, where we have to divert to make the multiplayer system work, we will. But as I say, if you've been following along with the videos, you'll see how far we've got with the setting up the website, the seeding of the data, and just maybe thinking a few things through. And so in this video, what we're going to do is actually get the user flow, like the registration process, to be able to then for the user to pick a race to play with, and then to carry on from there. So without further ado, let's get started. Okay, very good. Now you may have heard me being a little bit hesitant as I was speaking there, and to be honest, this is not my first attempt at making this video. For this particular number 12, I've had so many technical issues with trying to get the inertia system to work, and I kept failing for some reason. So what I did was, I've already started on this and made some changes to some files already, and I'm just going to talk you through what I've done already. So the best way for me to do that is if I just do git status, and we can see what files have changed, and then you'll understand what we've done. So public.js app, that's just a compile file, so we can ignore this one here. We don't need to look at that. Well, let's have a look at base controller then. So base controller. So remember, that just got us to our base page. And the only difference I've done here is I've added this data for the user. Now, the problem I had before was Inertia has the ability to share data like on every web page, so you don't have to specify it each time. But for some reason, and I don't know if this is deliberate, you have to have it in your controller first. If I take this out and then I try to run this page, let me log in actually. So if I log in with Carney. Okay, so you'll notice that no user or base is set. Now in the actual file, I think I might have taken one of them out now anyway, just to check. So in the base file, I have user, base is just the name. So user is page.user, which is meant to be this shared data here, this page.property. But it didn't work. However, if I put it in the base controller, even though this isn't where it gets its data, so I put into base controller this key of user. So what that means is in base, I now set this props as user, and this user is what's brought in from here. That's basically what this is here. So even though this is page.user, if I reload this page, it works. That page.user here works, even though that's not this. Page.user is shared above this layout so that it's always available. But it seems that for some reason it won't show it unless I have the props, unless I've set it in the controller to come in through as a prop. Now I don't know if that's a bug or if I'm doing something wrong, but it's taken me ages to work this out, and I couldn't work out what was going on. So what I'm going to do is, I'm just going to leave that in as it is. Page user works. If the rest of that, if we go to the status, is in the kernel here, and it's to do with this middleware handle inertia requests, which is what the inertia website requests us to do. So let's have a look at this in the kernel. Handle inertia requests. So as you can see, I set up a default middleware. Let me just get rid of that. And I'd simply check if there's a user. If there is, send the user down, otherwise send null. Now, I'm just going to try something. Let me just, if I just send null here now and then reload the page. Yeah, see it. It's still rendering. I don't understand what's going on. Let me compile the page. Maybe I've not compiled it since I last made a change. Maybe I've done it wrong. So that's compiled. Let's reload the page. Okay, so that's working. Okay, and that is page.user. But page.user now is null. What isn't null is just user. But for some reason, this seems to work. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to try this and just try user. Oop. Let me put a couple of breaks in there. So that's compiled. Reload that. Yeah, it's almost as if it's getting crossed, one page.user and user, because it's both returning basically what's come in from here. And I mean, it's not the end of the world if I have to pass the user in every controller reference, but I would have rather have not done that. So what we're going to do, I'll leave it like this for now, and we'll just come back to it. I didn't want to waste any more time on it. It's taken me ages already. Let's just go back to git status and see what other files we looked at. So base controller, kernel. Oh yeah, the create users table. Now we did, obviously the create users table was from the beginning, but last video we created the race ID, which is what a user can belong to. But because the user registers and then later on in the process then chooses a race, this should be null, and I forgot to set it as nullable, so it was causing an error when the user was being created. So all I've done here is just added that nullable on the end there. And then on the roots web, let's have a look, what have I done here? Okay, so yeah, I've just created, I think originally it was like that, and you know, this didn't exist like that. So I think what I've done is I put that there so that it goes under the middleware of inertia, and the inertia middleware, we go to the kernel, the inertia middleware was basically that handle inertia requests middleware which we were looking at earlier, which we were trying to get the data from. So that route was basically saying, you know, pass that in as part of the data that you get. But yeah, I'm a bit concerned as to why that isn't working. I'm going to leave it for now. As soon as it becomes more apparent, maybe as we develop it, you know, let's address it. But for now, we've got it coming in on our user, on our base controller for the base. We've got it as a user here. Let's just stick with that. You know, if it works, it works. This isn't ideal. I am going to address this at some point, just so you're aware of that. But, you know, for the minute, I'm just not quite sure what to do. Anyway, so that's where we're up to. So what that means is we have access to our user. So what we can do now, and this is what the purpose of this video is to now sort of determine, has the user selected a race? If they have, show them whatever we can here. If they haven't, then we need to make sure we give them the race selection code first before anything else. So that's what we're going to do today. I know this is a bit unorthodox how we've done this, where I've done some code, but every time I was trying to do it live, or as I was recording it, just kept messing up. Just do me head in. So this seems to work up to now. So let's go back to the base file. In fact, let's close all others. Okay. So in our base file, we know we now have a user. I'm going to use the user one from the prop. Yeah. We'll just keep dropping it in the controllers as we need them. I can't be bothered faffing around with that shared data all the time. So what we'll do is we'll create a template here, and let's create another one, and then we'll say set and not, and in here we'll put a v if user dot race ID. In other words, is the race ID set? And in here we'll just put v else. In other words, it isn't. So that will need to compile now. So let's run npm watch on that. Now, just to say that a user really shouldn't get to the base controller unless they are authenticated as a user. Might be worth just checking I've done that right on the routes. Oop, wrong one. On the routes. So web and inertia. So I think that needs to be auth web, I think, for a user to be logged in. Let's have a look. Where's my web browser? There. This may error. Base and not. Okay. So that tells me, well, number one, it's not kicked us out with the middleware, so that's good. Number two, but not was basically where are we? Where's our base file gone? Oh, this was the other project I was using to try and help me. Let's get rid of that now, because we don't need this anymore. Yeah, okay, so base not means user race ID is not set, and that's correct because we haven't given it the option to be set yet. If I reload that, race ID is still null. So that's correct. Incidentally, if I put a value in there, let's say race ID 1, it says set. So yeah, so it is picking up the right data there, so that's cool. Let's just put that back to null. Okay, so what we can do is say if it's not set, then we don't really want them to do anything else until it is. It's got to be like an overriding thing, really. So you know, if they, I suppose there needs to be a middleware that if they try to go somewhere else and they haven't yet set the race, it needs to bring them back here, and then this page can handle that. So we could do with setting up another middleware that does that. Home controller. Yeah, let's say they try to go to the home controller, and we have a route for that here. In fact, that can go inside authweb. Okay, and no, let's do that. Let's say this. Let's create the middleware. So PHP artisan make middleware has race. Yeah, I'm all right with that. And we basically want that on every route, don't we? Because we don't want to risk them going to a page where they definitely need to have a race set and they don't. So let's just put that as a global thing. Now at the minute it just returns the next request, that's fine. But what we want to check is if request, I think it's user race ID if is null. No, we need, let's get the user. User equals user where ID. I know I can use a found on that, but I prefer to use where, to be honest. So where ID equals request user ID. Okay, let's get the first. Then we can say if request user race ID. Oh, no, it's just user now, isn't it? So if user race ID, in other words, if it's set, we can just return next. Else, we need to return I'm back, and I've made quite a few changes to make this work. It was a little tricky. It's quite a lot tricky, actually. So let's go through this a bit at a time. Let's just check all the files that I've changed. So the base controller, let's see what I did with that. Yeah, okay, so we know about that. We just returned the user as a parameter there. The kernel, I think I have made a change here with the middleware. So I've put it as a named root now, has race, rather than having it on here. And then the actual middleware itself just checks if the user doesn't have a race and that the current root is not base. So if it's not, then it goes to base. In fact, we don't need to do that. All we have to do is make sure now that that middleware isn't applied to the base root. So if we go down to web, so I've applied that middleware has race to the base root. What we can do is, let's see, how can we do this? If we close that up there, and okay, so no, hang on. So everything has that and that. Oh no, I was right the first time. Oh no. Oh my goodness, this is crazy. So what I can do now is take off has race from that. So home and base will have web and inertia, but home will now also have has race as well. Let's just app done something a bit wrong there. Let's just get rid of that. Base controller, home controller. Let's just namespace them. Import controller. Oh, let's just take the namespace off, I should say. That's fine. So all that's done is put these U's at the top of the page. So now this is what we have. It's loaded the base page, but what it's done is it's loaded this, what's going to be like a modal. So I'll just show you what I've done here in the base. Basically said, if there's a user ID, that's fine. We'll put some of the content up there. Otherwise, we put this background on, which is like full width and height of everything of the window. That's what fixed is. It's the tailwind class. Inset naught means then it makes it as big as that. So fixed means it is that size we're working to purport it relative coordinates. Inset naught basically says now max out to what you can to every dimension. Opacity 75 just gives it a little bit of see-through, so you can just see the background there, but obviously that'll look different once we're finished. And then a BG grey just to darken it down a bit. I think maybe even a bit more than that, maybe 300. Let's have a look. Yeah, may even be able to go darker than that actually. Yeah, okay, so that's fine. And then on top of that, we just put this absolute reference to this, which just basically means it maxes out to the full screen. And again, we put an inset on there, but then we put a margin in there just to give it a bit of space so you can see it like a pop-up. A large shadow, rounded, and then full opacity again. And that gives us this modal. So just to show you what it looks like if a race was set, let's put that in. And you can see it just says set and there's no pop-up appearance modal or anything like that. Whereas if we set that to to null, no race set, then we have this modal and we're going to have a pop-up race in here. Okay, so let's put that on then. Let's just do a simple, let's put it on the mounted, because what we want to do is get a list of the axios.get API /races. So that should give us a list of races, and then we can say then resp this dot races equals resp data races. So we need to set up a data return. So we need to set up an array here called races, and then what we'll do is we'll have this pick a race. Let's just put that inside a div just so we can isolate it, and then we can have well, let's do it in a div, it's fine, and then we can put a flex on it. So div v4 equals race in races race dot name. So let's see if that works. Axios is not defined. Okay, so we had this issue earlier as well. I'm not sure. I can import it into this page, which is what I did on one of the previous cuts of this video, but we do have it. Oh, by the way, I want to get rid of Bootstrap and jQuery and Popper, but we do have it here. So I'm a little bit in. Oh, is it because I don't import? I don't import Bootstrap. That's why. Import. I forgot to do that last time. Maybe that's why. There we go. So Axios has worked now because it's actually tried to get the URL API races. But that doesn't exist. So let's create the controller. So let's see, PHP artisan make controller API race controller, and then we'll just put some scaffold in there. And then we can just return response JSON races race all. Change return type. Okay, so let's try this now then. Let's go back to here. And oh, we haven't put a root in. Okay, so we need to create a no, this is the URL, so that needs to be races, and then we'll have race controller class. Yeah, I would rather namespace that, as in put that up there. Yeah, so it's nice and tidy here. So now reload the page, we get humans and proximans, which are races in our database. So that is excellent. That's brought them through. So what we can do now is make these a clickable thing. Just to finish this off, we'll tidy it up later, but for now, if we let's see, if we in fact, no, let's just simplify this real easy right now. Let's do a button and do at click equals choose, and maybe we'll put the race ID in there. Okay, so we need to create a method now called choose. And this is just a case going axios.post API. Now let's see, what are we doing here? We're updating the user, aren't we? So API users we should have a user ID from this global user, so we'll just do this.user. No, so we're not posting, we're patching. But I think how that works is we say method. Oh, I can't remember how this works now. Is it? I think that's post, because we have to post it. But we do method patch, and then if we do race ID is ID. Okay, so now obviously we don't have a user controller at the minute, so let's just create that. Okay, and so in here we need to do a well, it's already there. We need to do an update. Let's do that. My concern is request all, whether this can be like spoofed with more data because it's in a fill. You know, they could change other parameters of the user, especially if we start storing like achievements and levels and stuff in the user. So yeah, we'll come back to that. For now, I just want to make it functional. Response JSON, and we'll just say, well, let's just return the user. Let's put a 200 on that. Okay. Oh, just need to change the docs here. That's all. Okay. So if we return the user, actually, this is interesting because if we're returning the user, then resp, then we can say, okay, let's leave it off for a minute. But I've got an idea. Let's pick proximans. And what happens? 404 not found. Oh, I didn't put the root in, did I? So let's go to API. Let's just put users in there for now. Let's try that again. Proximans 500. Oh, what was my error? Target class user controller does not exist. Oh, of course I didn't import it, did I? Import class. Just put a use here. Try that again. Okay, so that's return my user. Hasn't set the race ID, and I think that's because we need to put that as a fillable item here. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's returned there, which has a race ID of 2, which is the Proximans. Let's go to races, and we have set to 2, which is fine. But what we need to do now is basically make this page now respond to that, because when we've sent that, we need to get rid of this. So what we're going to do, we bring this in as a prop, but we can't change a prop. So what we're going to have is local user, and then we'll just change all the references to local user. But then when we're mounting, we'll say this dot local user equals this dot user. So that basically gets it out of the prop and into our local setup. So then when this updated user gets returned after we have made a selection, we can say this dot local user equals resp data user. So let me reset that back to null. Let's reload the page. Cannot read property race ID of null. That's fine, because we need to say v if equals, we only show it if it's been set, so that's fine. As soon as I click this, it goes away because it's set. Excellent. And if we go to the database, it's set. Race ID is 2. Well, that's brilliant. We're going to call it a quits there because it's been a nightmare, this particular video. I don't know how long it's going to cut down to. Certainly a lot longer than I want to, but we've got it doing what we want to do. Functionally, we can style it out a bit more now. And there's a few other security concerns that are starting to creep in that I want to address, which I certainly don't want to leave and forget about it. Or maybe I'll come back another time, I don't know. But anyway, for now, that's it. That's this video done. Hopefully it's not been too complex for you. I know this is meant to be like a sort of a novice style beginning coding, but we are using some complex stuff now. And hopefully, you know, check the GitHub repo or the Bitbucket repo. Make sure you're happy with the code. And all being well, we'll see you on the next video. Please like and subscribe if you did find this useful. Subscribe if you want to see more of this kind of video. And we'll see you soon.